Hi there, Leah from Lekela Music here, and today's topic is for sure a hot one. It's the number one problem I hear from students all over the world, young and old. Why is sight reading so bloomin' hard? And I hear you, I really do. I know how frustrating it is when all you want to do is play the music on the page in front of you, and the only thing coming between you being able to do that is the music on the page in front of you. So this video isn't about the nuts and bolts of reading music. I have two other videos that go into depth on how to read notes and rhythm, and I'll link to them at the end of this video. So I'm assuming that you've watched those and that you more or less have the theoretical knowledge, but you're still struggling. So I wanted to address a few issues that might be contributing and hopefully give you some encouragement. But just to give you some advance warning here, there might be some tough love coming up in this video, so just be prepared for that, and it's only because I want you to succeed. You know I do, so you have to be ready for the pitfalls that everybody experiences on this journey that we're all on together, myself included, of learning to play this amazing instrument. So get yourself comfortable and let's get started. So I suppose it's the psychology of learning is what we're really going to look at here. And because learning to read and play music is such a long game, it's really important to be aware of the kinds of mental traps that we can fall into, because if you know to expect them, and we know we're not alone in them, and they're actually very common, we can deal with them more effectively. So here we go. Number one, the reason you still can't sight read is because you actually avoid doing any as much as possible, consciously or unconsciously. So you're working on a piece maybe that you love and you've always wanted to play and now you're going for it, or maybe it's something you're preparing for an exam or a recital and you're practicing so hard, but you actually only look at the page as a last resort and you're really trying to play it from memory. And I sympathise, it's really hard it's hard work to decipher music on a page, especially if you're working on a piece that you find a bit challenging. But if you're avoiding having to look at the page, it's not helping your learning. And if that becomes an habitual tactic in your practice, it's going to slow down your learning overall. So for one thing, you're in danger of misremembering the music, accidentally finding notes that sound okay, and you're practicing those instead of the notes that are actually in the music, and then it becomes even harder to correct when you realise the mistake. So make the effort to actually look at the music you're learning, at least in the early stages. It's fine to memorise as long as you're memorising the right thing. And every time you have to figure out a note, it leaves a tiny trace in your memory that gets stronger over time. So it might be a headache to do it now, but it contributes in a significant way to your long-term learning. And trust me, future you will be very grateful you made the effort now. Number two, if you're not learning with a teacher, you might be working exclusively on music that's kind of too hard for you. Do you remember learning to read in school? Did you start reading Pride and Prejudice and To Kill a Mockingbird at age 5? Well, for most of us, no. We started with Bob and Jane Play Ball in the Park, and we read a lot at that level every day, and we only moved on gradually, incrementally building on what we learned the year before. So learning to read music, well, it isn't anything like as complicated as learning to read, well, English especially. If we devoted the same time to learning to read music as we do language, we'd all be fluent by age 8. But the point I'm making is you probably need to spend more time sight reading a lot of material at each level. If you're working on intermediate level music, but you find yourself spending a lot of time staring hard at notes on the staff, then you probably need to include a lot more music at earlier levels. I'm not saying you can't work on music that's very challenging, but make sure you also work on music that's easy, and lots of it. Number three, you don't actually practice sight reading at all. Seriously, if you came to me and said, honestly, I've been doing 10 minutes of sight reading every day for the past year and I still can't read anything, my response would be, first of all, to check that your understanding of the mechanics of it is accurate, and then I'd be asking maybe about dyslexia. For the vast majority of people, if you are genuinely practicing it as a skill in itself and not just incidental to whatever music you're working on, you're going to make progress. If you practice it, it will get easier, especially if you're paying attention to both elements of sight reading, the identification of the notes and the recognition of the patterns and the intervals. If you're not sure what I mean by the last one, please do watch the video I linked to at the end of this one. It'll make things a lot easier in that regard. But going back to the school analogy, you did a metric ton of practicing to learn to read language. And if you drive, you did a lot of practice to master that too. So in terms of complexity, I would say reading music is somewhere between those two. So if you can do either of those, you can do this too. But for God's sake, practice every day, 5 or 10 minutes, just do it. Number four, you started learning piano yesterday. So if you started learning piano or any instrument in the past 6 months and you're still finding it hard and time consuming to read music, well done you, you're exactly where you should be. It takes time and many exposures to the various notes and rhythms you'll encounter in music, for recognition of them to become automatic, which is what we're after. I know it's hard, I know it's headache inducing at times, but I encourage you to keep going. You're probably starting to recognise a lot of notes, and you can figure out, basic rhythms. So celebrate that. Think back to when you couldn't recognise anything. Take the time to acknowledge your progress every time you're able to identify another note or another interval just by looking at it. And whatever you do, don't give up. Which brings me to the final reason that you still can't read music. So number 5 is you keep giving up. Be honest, how many times have you thrown in the towel and declared you're never touching the piano again? Actually, that's not really what it looks like, is it? It's probably more likely that you get a burst of enthusiasm and spend a week or two doing loads of practice and playing loads of music, and then it just kind of stops and 2 months go by, and then you hear something amazing, or you remember why you started in the first place and you feel super motivated, and the cycle starts again. So consistency is everything, isn't it? There's a slogan I saw somewhere recently that really resonated with me, and it said something like success equals hard work plus time, and time is the magic ingredient here. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway here. Consistent application, repeated regularly, will bring results. So have patience. Don't try to avoid sight reading by playing from memory. Play lots and lots of material at each level. Don't try to skip ahead. Even if you're playing harder repertoire, be sure to include music from easier levels. And above all, be honest with yourself about the quality of practice that you're doing. You know when you're genuinely taking the time to develop the various skills you need, and when you're actually avoiding them. Here's an experiment for you. Okay, so grab a notebook or a post-it note, or even just the inside of the cover of a music book you use, and write down the names of the notes that you're confident about recognising, or the range, and the note values in quarter notes or eighth notes and so on, that you're confident that you can play accurately. And then commit to a month of practising sight reading for 5 or 10 minutes every day. Whether you're using an app like Tenuto or working from sight reading books, and there are loads of those available, even books of repertoire for different levels is a great way to practice sight reading. And then at the end of the month, write down the range of notes and the rhythms that you're now able to play easily, and compare the two. I bet you'll see a big difference. And I want to hear about it. So leave me a comment when you've done that. So I hope this has given you something to think about. Do any of these points resonate with you? As always, hit the like button and subscribe if you'd like to be notified whenever I release a new video. And if there's something you'd like me to make a video about, let me know in the comments below. So I'll see you again soon, and in the meantime, happy practicing.